Welcome to Nasdaq TradeTalks. I'm your host, Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq. We're coming to you live from Mainnet 2024 by Masari. And joining me for this segment, we have Nneoma Kanu. She's the Technical Governance Specialist at StableLab. We're here to discuss protocol governance and leveraging data-driven insights. It is great to meet with you, Nneoma. Welcome to TradeTalks.
Lovely to meet with you, Jill. I'm glad to be here.
All right. Let's talk about the importance of delegates in protocol governance. How is this framework being developed?
I will say that delegates have quickly become what I will say is more ubiquitous in the governance space as filtering functions for governance. So as you know, with governance, sustaining participation is one of the existential problems of DAO governance. And delegates have actually come in and started to play a more active role in governance in reaching consensus around decisions, protocol governance. So really thinking about how, for example, with DeFi protocols, there are so many different parameters that need to be set in terms of risk, in terms of collateral onboarding, and delegates play a really huge role in self-organizing and making sure that the proposals that are going through the governance pipeline are actually beneficial to the protocol. StableLab has actually also pioneered this role of professionalizing the delegate space by advocating for paid delegation. And so really with this, we see that delegates are contributing to a lot of top line metrics in terms of like growth, security for protocols, and it's really hard work. It's a 24/7 ecosystem, and so yeah, we see that delegates are putting in a lot of hard work and they deserve to get paid for their time, and that is really the realm that we're working in, making sure that decisions are effective, DAOs are agile and responsive to the general climate of the space.
So when you think about ecosystem growth, it's a big part of that is going to happen through incentives. Yeah.
Incentives, especially with the race for dominance in the market, capturing market share, incentives have become really commonplace in decentralized ecosystems. I think one of the more popular types of incentives have been airdrops, which is essentially how people start to seed community-owned governance. But really we see with these incredibly powerful primitives that we have access to in this space, there's so many different forms of incentives that you can orchestrate and you can administer. And part of that is, on one hand, retroactive funding. We see a lot of that. On the other hand, we see grants. And StableLab is very hands-on with protocol DAOs in designing and administering these incentive programs, and also really trying to determine how useful they are, not just to the ecosystem, but to the protocol itself.
So would a delegate be akin to what a moderator is in a Web 2 platform, if you will? In other words, let's take a step back here. What is the role of a delegate? What exactly do they do?
I think the bottom line for delegates is to really prioritize active participation. So that is contributing to discussions on the forum, that is also voting on proposals, that is also giving feedback on proposals from different stakeholders in the ecosystem. But actually it's been taken a step further because the role of delegates continues to evolve and of course, like I said, professionalized. And so delegates are actually also self-organizing and forming different hierarchies within DAOs. So we see delegates actually taking on roles like council members within DAOs, spearheading things like working groups where they can actually work around common goals, very specific set of common goals that drive top-line metrics for DAOs and protocols as well. So yeah, the role of delegates is pretty diverse depending on the type of ecosystem that they're working in.
So I would imagine that leveraging data-driven insights will help to remove some of that subjectivity around it.
Absolutely. Yeah, governance has been a very subjective game thus far. A lot of people have been working off of assumptions mainly, but StableLab, we actually launched our data governance platform called Force, and what Force essentially does is monitor on and off-chain data and analyze to really show DAOs the efficiency and efficacy of their incentive programs, of different governance decisions that they make, so they know for a fact what is actually driving growth for their protocols and so on.
So to me that sounds like it's very encouraging in my mind because you're starting to put standards around it, right? And I feel like a lot of times with newer projects, if there's no way to quantify whether they're effective or however you want to describe them, the fact that it's being standardized it sounds like it helps lend to the maturity of the space.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think DAOs in general, the space of decentralized governance, is a very fertile ground for experiments. We are experimenting around human coordination, we're experimenting around incentive design, we're experimenting around attention allocation, so many different things. And thus far, there haven't really been much standards because we've realized that there's no one-size-fits-all approach when it comes to governance. But really, when we're honing into data-driven insights, it helps us really understand what works and what doesn't, and that will really help us internally as a company and also ecosystem-wide sort of set these standards for how things go with DAOs, and really also will help regulators understand what's happening as well.
Encouraging work. Appreciate the insight, Nneoma. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks, and thanks for joining me from Mainnet. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.